What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Joe Morley Sports Show. I got a special guest with me today, Brian from Bolstered Up Sports. And you can find them on Instagram, Twitter. They have a podcast. I know it's available on Spotify. Brian, is it available on all platforms?
It's on most. So it's available on Apple, Spotify, Podbean. You can also find the episodes on YouTube as well. So I appreciate you having me on a lot.
Oh yeah, hey, I want to thank you for coming on. Me and you have been talking, a lot, or just over Instagram, and that's where we met. And basically, we just fell in love with each other's work and the work ethic that we both put in. And I know you talk and it's cool because I talk basically more football, more baseball, a little bit fantasy, and then you go a little bit outside. I know you talk college, you talk football. There's a lot of stuff, basketball, that you go off that I have no idea, and so I'm actually learning from you as well. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I appreciate that, first of all, and definitely you've helped me kind of grow through Instagram. But so me, myself, I grew up playing every sport I could. I loved it so much that I ended up getting into teaching and coaching. So right now I'm a high school football coach, but I've also coached baseball as well. And, I've got a passion for every sport out there, really. My main trio would probably be football, baseball, and basketball. Definitely here where I've grown up in North Carolina, and you've probably seen a lot of my stuff with the Duke North Carolina rivalry, is that's just such a big deal. And even though I'd say football is probably my favorite sport, that rivalry holds so much weight where I come from that you have to be fully invested in that as a fan.
See, and I was gonna ask you about the Duke UNC stuff that you're always posting, and I understand from being over there how big of a rivalry it is. I don't get to see it from where I'm at in California because we have UCLA, USC, and I don't think they live up to the hype of all these other ones, especially like that one. Yeah, for the UNC and Duke results.
Oh, okay. So that was this poll series I was running, and I was comparing similar players from different eras in the Duke North Carolina basketball series. And then I even did the top coach from each program, which is Coach Mike Krzyzewski and then Coach Dean Smith. And then I posted one after that. I thought the results were, they were kind of fell in more of my favor. And so I posted another one that was just like, well, is Duke just way better because they won, 17 out of the roughly 25 polls? Or is it just that more Duke fans follow me? And then, either way, that's kind of a win-win for me. But, it's interesting you bring up USC and UCLA, and I've got a pretty good tie into that rivalry as well. My family is actually from Southern California. And so my dad is huge into LA sports. That's how, I'm big into the Lakers, but also USC, particularly football. And yeah, me only being, in my mid-20s, to me, USC, UCLA, isn't a rivalry. It's really just, at least in football, it's really just USC dominates, and which year is it going to be that UCLA can pull an upset and destroy the season, which does hurt. That hurts the heart pretty good. But definitely, from my perspective, at least in college basketball, nothing really compares to Duke, North Carolina.
Yeah, I would say that has to be one of the top, if not the top, right there. It's rivalries in all of sports. I mean that rivalry, not just college basketball, but it would go up against some of the top in any other sport.
Oh, completely agree. Especially, part of what makes a rivalry so great is not only the competition on the field or on the court, but it's how heated the fans get. And I can tell you, at least in North Carolina, it gets pretty heated. And, it's something that even though basketball isn't a year-round sport, at least college basketball, the season, as far as the fandom, it's a year-round sport. And trash is talked all year round, all 12 months.
Well, that's the good thing. I'm glad I don't have a rivalry like that because I can't take it. I can dish it, but I can't take it. That's
Well, hey, I can tell you that's how a lot of people are. I try to do my best to take it, but I do tend to be someone who's always got to get the last word. So in that sense, I have a little bit of tough time taking that trash talk and not responding.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And then I was going to get into a kind of a little bit about basketball. We're transitioning from college to basketball. NBA's hopefully to start up pretty soon. Hopefully get their stuff going in Orlando. Do you think that's actually going to happen? Where do you see them going? Do you actually see the whistle blowing and the buzzer going and them actually stepping on that court?
I do. I was so optimistic when that first broke the news that they had finalized the deal. Some details still in pencil, but it's going to happen. We're going to have a conclusion to the season and the playoffs. I mentioned I'm a Lakers fan, so this year's a big year. Definitely don't want to waste it. And over the time since then, I've been getting a little bit more pessimistic. Just there's more reports coming out, players testing positive. A lot of players have voiced their concerns. Kyrie Irving, a Dookie, is kind of breaking my heart here with, really pushing back against it. But, I really think the season will happen, and that's for a couple reasons. Probably first and foremost, the money. They can still make so much money off of just the TV deal that not having fans will hurt them, but doesn't need to scrap the whole season. And then number two would be LeBron James is such an influence in the NBA, and he's really pushing for them to complete the season. So I think those two things coupled together, there will be a conclusion to this NBA season. Now, will it go to plan? Who knows? Will more players test positive? I'd say that's almost a certainty. One of those things that, if you choose to show up in Orlando, that's part of the risk that you're going to have to take.
Yeah, it's a big risk, but sometimes the risk is worth the reward. So you being a Laker fan, are you taking the Lakers to win it?
No doubt. I'm taking the Lakers, and I'm not going to say I'm not biased, but when it comes down to it, I'm going to bet on LeBron James over anybody else. I think the main threat to the Lakers would be the Clippers, and that's one reason I'm a little bit more disappointed that this is having to play out in Orlando, because that's another rivalry that's been very one-sided. And I know if they got to a place where they'd be in the Western Conference Finals against each other, that's 7 home games for the Lakers. And that's no doubt an advantage. So them playing in basically, Orlando, a neutral site, that's going to take some of the edge off that the Lakers would have. But when it comes down to it, I'll bet on LeBron James and Anthony Davis over a Kawhi and Paul George, or a Giannis and Chris Middleton.
There you go. So I know that you were watching, the Bulls series that ESPN did. It's been a while now since they've done it, and you put up asking who the GOAT of all, of the NBA is. Who are you going with?
I would have to go with Michael Jordan. And without going too long on this, because I could go forever, I would define it as he's the greatest player ever. He's had the largest impact of any player. He's garnered the most respect from competitors that he went against, both players and coaches. And he could dominate the game in every facet, not only defense, but scoring. We've maybe never seen a better scorer, and we've maybe never seen a better two-way player. The championships, the awards speak for themselves. I do think a couple other players have an argument there, and namely LeBron and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I know some people don't like to always bring centers into the conversation, and I understand that can kind of be a separate conversation for those centers. If LeBron James, I'm not going to rule out that he can pass him, and who knows how long his career will go on, but I definitely think longevity and statistic totals will be kind of the departments where LeBron can edge out Michael Jordan.
See, I think that the docuseries actually did Jordan a little bit of favor because I'm in my 30s, you're in your 20s, and we got the maybe the tail end of Jordan's career if you actually watch baseball or basketball at that time. If people our age actually did watch it, we got the very tail end of it. Maybe you saw the Wizard days,
That's
which
all I saw.
so this docuseries actually gave us the behind the look and actually see how great he actually was. So maybe it puts into mind because I know before that came out, a lot of talk was Kobe, a lot of talk was LeBron, but that's because that's what everybody was watching at the time. So anytime they can come out with a good series and actually show you how hard these guys were and how great they actually were in their time, I think it helps them out tremendously.
No doubt, recency bias always plays a factor in any conversation like this. So when you get a chance to reminisce on the old times or just be reminded of those, it's helpful to add a little bit more context to that situation. And I know that documentary had a little bit of pushback because it was a little bit more of, kind of a docudrama than just a documentary, just plain facts. It helped build up some of the myth of Michael Jordan. And, I just think Michael Jordan he wins all the categories that you can't just put a number beside. Like, he is just a bad A. And people respect that. And I've seen numbers of analysts and former NBA players basically be like, well, that's the reason, though. Like, Michael Jordan is just that mentality, and he's a bad dude. And basically, that's the reason I'm just going to pick him over what they call nice guy LeBron.
Yeah, and nobody's going to argue with that. They can't argue with that because, facts are facts, like you said. So I know that you're a Tennessee Titan fan. They had a great run last year, fell a little bit short. Mariota's gone. He's come to my team now. So now Tannehill basically has been given the reins. Do you see them improving this year, or because some people are saying the Colts might take that division now? So is there a step back, or do you think they're going to continue what they were doing from last year?
I think they will continue what they're doing. Now, I think on its face that sounds like a bold prediction, but they went 9-7 last year, and I believe they've gone 9-7 the last 4 years. So I would expect a very similar record. I would hope they can get to 10 wins, 11 being about the high end. But to me, it all comes down to Ryan Tannehill. Can he duplicate what he pulled off last year? Me, myself, I have some doubts. I'm trying to stay optimistic, and that run in the playoffs, taking down the Ravens was so much fun, especially, when you're the underdog. Nobody's giving you a chance. And then running into the Chiefs just felt like a smack to the face. Like, you think you're one step, and really, you aren't that close when it comes down to it. On paper you were, but there's just a sizable gap between the Titans and the Chiefs, at least last year. I think they've got a lot of young players who are poised to take more steps forward. A.J. Brown is a future star. I really like Adam Humphries. If he can stay on the field, had some injuries last year. Adoree Jackson is just one of the more exciting players in the league. And Kevin Byard is, I think, probably the most underrated safety in the league because he plays in a smaller market. He's not as flashy as some of the others, but I really think they're going to have a solid season, make the playoffs. My one hesitancy would be the play of Ryan Tannehill. And then I'm a big believer that quarterbacks win divisions. And when I look at the AFC South, I see Deshaun Watson as the best quarterback in that division, and honestly by a pretty wide margin. Now, I know some of the moves they've made this offseason and off-seasons prior are head-scratching, but I really do think that people are maybe counting out the Texans just a little too much at this point.
See, I always put emphasis more on defense. I don't know. That was just the way that I grew up. Like, my thing was always defense wins championships. That's what was always thrown in our head. and now you see it how the NFL is turning and it's going more offensive wise. So I think the Tennessee Titans are good. I still have them projected as as 9-7 again this year, which would have gave them second place. Just because, like you said, of Tannehill, I'm not sure. I'm still iffy about him because I remember him in Miami. I remember everything he did there, and he's still learning as a quarterback. He was a wide receiver his whole almost his whole time in college, so he's still learning. He still has a lot to do, but I mean he's making the strides with Tennessee, and it's the good strides. But I'm still worried about a little bit of that defense, just a little bit of that defense, and that's what gets me when I think about Tennessee. Because yeah, I know Henry can run the ball all day and hopefully wear some teams down. But if they're not stopping him on the other side, that's where it's going to get to him.
No doubt. And a big piece of that's going to be Jeffrey Simmons, their first-round pick from the year prior coming off the ACL injury. He flashed at moments, but he's definitely going to have to be more consistent, and hopefully with the extra time to heal, he will be. I like some of their young pieces. Rashaan Evans out of Alabama, he made some flashy plays in the playoffs, just a lot of fourth down, third down, and short stops. Jayon Brown is really kind of your prototypical modern linebacker, can fly around everywhere. I definitely think there are two question marks on defense, mainly edge. So they've got Harold Landry, who I like, and then they signed Vic Beasley, a free agent this year, to a one-year deal, which I like to pick up, but I think there's still more that they need to add to that pass rush, and especially because their other weak point, if you're going to point at one, to me, would be corner. Adoree Jackson has been pretty dang good, but lacks consistency sometimes. And then Malcolm Butler really has gone way up and way down. They lost Logan Ryan. I know they drafted Christian Fulton in the second round, and I thought where they got him at was great value. But definitely those are the two question marks.
See, and that leads me to where I wanted you to go. There's one free agent out there that would really help this Titan team. And he's been linked to him a couple times. And that's Clowney. Do you think that Clowney is maybe the missing piece for the Tennessee Titans?
In an ideal world, yes. When you look at his highlight tape, you're like, oh my gosh, this guy is like, the modern version of Lawrence Taylor. If you just watch the highlights, so don't get me wrong here. But, he's a guy that's ultra talented, but never had double-digit sacks. He lacks consistency, not only in his production, but in his efforts. And he struggled with injuries throughout his career, usually minor ones that will either just affect his play negatively or just hold him out of a couple games. To me, I really don't want the Titans investing long-term money in him. For a one-year deal, I think it's perfect because, to me, the quarterback position, I know they paid him, but that still isn't solidified. And then we don't know how long this window will really be, especially with Derrick Henry on the franchise tag. To me, a perfect fit for a one-year deal, kind of low risk, high reward potential there. But long-term, I really hope they don't make that move.
Yeah, I mean, he's on the market for a reason. So something, either teams aren't buying into him for the price, or he's just not buying into the team. Because I heard Cleveland wanted him, and then they offered him a lot of money, and he said no. So, but I think Tennessee would be the best fit if he doesn't go back to Seattle. But like you said, they need pass rushers, and it's been shown that pass rushers is what we're going to need or what NFL defenses need in the upcoming seasons.
Definitely. And I think his options are limited at this time. I think he's really messed up his free agency. I think he's really kind of boxed himself into a corner where I don't see any team giving him more than a one-year deal. And then, yeah, just like you said, turning down the Browns, which I kind of get not wanting to go into that dysfunction, but that's a talented team. And if they're reportedly paying you more than anybody else, that's kind of head-scratching. He's been linked basically now to the Jets, the Seahawks, and the Titans. I just have a feeling, since nothing's happened yet, there might be some team to just kind of come out of nowhere. And I don't know who that might be, But, to me, it just almost seems like the Patriots again,
Oh.
where I'm not saying it's the greatest fit, but a low risk, high reward deal, and they're going to wait this out. So this would be really when we get down to crunch time, to the start of the season, and he could turn to them and say, well, maybe this is my best opportunity to win. Hook up with Bill Belichick. I don't know. That sounds weird saying it, but I just feel like something's going to kind of go off script here.
Yeah, and I don't know how much money they have. That they'd have to do some stuff to get him under the contract in New England, especially now that they signed Cam Newton. I know you touched on that on your page. Was that a surprise to you?
It was a surprise in the sense that it didn't happen when it seemed like it would be obvious just timing-wise of the offseason to happen. So, to be honest, Cam Newton kind of left my mind for a while. And then it was like, oh, yeah, he still hadn't signed anywhere. And it makes sense in a lot of ways. One, the contract they got him on, it's all incentives-based, and it's a one-year deal. So, really, they're taking no risk. And they have potential to really pay off with Cam Newton's ultra talented again, but liken him to Jadeveon Clowney, very inconsistent. And that's really the word I would use to describe Cam Newton. He's only had 3 winning seasons. He's 0-8 in his last 8 starts. His MVP year, as great as it was, is starting to look more and more like an anomaly. And then now you couple that with the past 2 years really being banged up. So I think it's just a big question mark. I don't even think they really know what kind of Cam Newton that they're going to get. But for that price, to me, it's a no-brainer. And it's definitely going to be exciting and bring the Patriots back into the limelight, whether that's going to be for more success or for everybody finally getting to jab some punches this year.
See, I'm kind of with you. I like Cam Newton. And I think when he's 100%, he's a game changer. But he has to be 100%, and that's where we don't know where he's at right now. And we can see. Yeah, I mean, you could work out in the gym and you could do all this, but can you take the hit? And how many hits can you take on the field to determine it? I still never really ruled out the Patriots, just because I'm always afraid of what Belichick has up his sleeve. Coaches like that can find some guy off the street and just turn him into, the next great superstar. I think they lost a lot of things. I had the Patriots going 8-8 before Cam. I still have them going 8-8 with Cam Newton. So I don't see the big difference in it. But like you said, if he is 100%, it could translate to 2 or 3 more wins.
No doubt. And, Vegas is really right there with you. Before Cam Newton, they had the Patriots over under 9 wins. After Cam Newton, it's 9.5. Basically, there's just too much unknown right now. I like that you had them going 8-8 because I think a lot of people, as crazy as it seems, just kind of forgot who else is on the Patriots roster, and then mainly that Bill Belichick is still there. And I saw a lot of predictions that we're going to have the Patriots 4 wins, 5 wins, possibly even tanking for Trevor Lawrence. And it's like, have you not watched the last 20 years? Like, they're going to be pretty solid, even if Jared Stidham, who, to me is a big unknown and could potentially not be very good. It's hard for me to really see them dropping below 7 wins. It could happen, but, I got a lot of faith in Bill Belichick. So I'd say Vegas is right on it. And, yeah, it's probably going to be about 8 or 9 wins this year.
And people forget they had a season without Tom Brady. And they
That's
went
right.
They went 11-5.
11-5. Matt Castle out of USC,
So,
which many people don't know. I don't believe he even started a game in college.
yeah.
Had to sit behind a couple top draft picks. And, yeah, that's a great point where the one season they didn't have Tom Brady in the last 20, they went 11-5. So, I don't know that the roster is quite in that shape, but the defense is solid. That defense is going to be really good again. The offensive line is good, and they're going to put Cam Newton in the right positions to be successful. I think, I've gotten a lot of questions on what to expect out of the Patriots offense scheme-wise. And I think a good place to start would go back and look at the Broncos with Tim Tebow, because that was when Josh McDaniels was a head coach there. And his first move was a polarizing one to draft Tim Tebow in the first round. And I think they see Cam Newton not as Tim Tebow, but more we can do some of those things. We can get him on the move. And to me, if Cam Newton's going to be successful, he's got to have success on the ground first. Not only with James White and Sony Michel, but also himself. He's one of the best running quarterbacks ever. I believe he has 58 rushing touchdowns. And to me, he is an absolute weapon on the goal line or really any short yardage situation. If he is healthy, that's tough to stop.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's a good risk to pay that little bit of money, and hopefully it pays off. And I'm always rooting for the player to come back. I'm always rooting for them to be back to 100%, so they're not judged off of their injury seasons, and we actually see how good they are. So I'm rooting for Cam. I don't root for the Patriots and never will, but I'll root for Cam himself as a player, because I'd rather knock off a player at 100% and they have no excuses to go back on and say, well, I wasn't 100%. No, I hit you at the top of your game and we still beat you.
That's exactly right. And unfortunately, that happens far too often with players, that injuries derail their career or derail a team's success in the playoffs. And, in an ideal world, yeah, there would be no injuries. But unfortunately, that's a big part of the NFL.
Well, I'm going to throw some NFL. We'll play like who's your favorite or who's the best. I got three positions. I got a quarterback, wide receiver, running back. I'll throw two names at you. You tell me which one's your favorite and where they belong in history.
All right, let's go.
So we'll start with quarterback. This one's a little bit tough, and it's a one that they always talk about. You got Joe Montana, Tom Brady.
To me, this is easy. To me, it's Tom Brady, and that's for a couple of reasons. I mean, first off, modern offense kind of helps these newer quarterbacks put up the stats, so that might be skewing my opinion a little bit. But to me, these are the two quarterbacks that are the ultimate winners, have the ultimate team success and the Super Bowl victories on their resume. And Tom Brady's is just better. He's been to 9 Super Bowls. He's won 6. I'm not completely ruling out that we see him in another one, and which would just be crazy. I think he has longevity on his side, which some people do forget that Joe Montana actually, once he left the 49ers, he still had success with the Chiefs. I believe he got them to an AFC championship. But to me, the two categories that Joe Montana really thrives in when you look on his career is the Super Bowl victories coupled with team success and then longevity. And to me, Tom Brady has just done what he has and then gone even further with it.
Yeah, and I think that was his idol growing up, right? Tom Brady was always watching Joe Montana. Right.
Yeah, he is a big 49ers fan.
All right, so we'll go wide receiver. And this one, basically I just took him from the same team, Chris Carter and Randy Moss.
Ooh. That's an interesting one because, Chris Carter is known for being consistent. All he does is catch touchdowns. And, they're both great on TV as well. But I would have to go with Randy Moss, even though at times he would drive you nuts and leave you with so many head-scratching performances. He is probably the most talented receiver of all time. The size, the speed. We saw once he was able to hook up with Tom Brady, they set all sorts of records. So to me, I'm betting on the talent, and I'm going with Randy Moss there.
There you go. All right. These are the reason I picked these two, because these two are my favorite running backs of all time. And something always drew me to watch these guys. I wasn't a fan of their team, but I always had to watch these guys on Sunday. And they're both not in the NFL anymore, but they're just two grinders. And it's Curtis Martin and Matt Forte.
Yeah, grinders is definitely a good word for both of those guys that kind of do it all. Running backs, definitely, I would say Curtis Martin was a little bit before his time. And, you know, I would probably have to go with Curtis Martin. I think, you know, he's just done so much, and for the Jets as well, having that be part of your legacy, you know, arguably one of the top Jets players in history. I would have to go with Curtis Martin. Although, I mean, Matt Forte really, I think, started the trend of running backs really catching the ball out of the backfield. And he did a great job with Jay Cutler, put up quite a few stats. And I think that he kind of opened the door for running backs like an Alvin Kamara or like a Christian McCaffrey.
See, I think I'm with you. I think both of these guys started getting their love after their playing careers. Like, people didn't realize what we were watching when they were actually on the field until they were both gone. And that's the sad thing is, but like you said, they paved the way for the new generation, and just the hard work that both of them put in, or at least, I mean, we don't know them personally, but what they portrayed on TV and during games is they portrayed that they were hard workers and they loved the game of football.
No doubt. Definitely grinders. Without a doubt, Curtis Martin. I'd say that's like the lasting impact that he had. Is like, that was a guy that just came to work and did his very best every single time. There was no question about it. Like, you knew what you were getting from him.
And I think if I remember right, I think he played like a year or two without cartilage in his knee. Like, that's how bad his knees were at the end of his career, but he was still out there, carrying the team. So
Yeah. His knees went on him, sadly.
But let me ask you this: since you're a high school coach, what's like one thing that you always tell your players? Like, because being a high school athlete, it's tough. There's a lot of stuff that you're going through. You're dealing with your family at home. You're dealing with trying to your education and trying to better yourself and go somewhere. What do you always tell your players?
That's such a great question, and it's such a topic that I think probably needs to be discussed more. And to me, it's all about sacrifice. And a lot of people maybe miss the mark on that. They think it's all talent and all just kind of given to you. And, the truth is, talent is just a major factor, right? Like, I'm not going to say that it's not, but players, and just like people in other aspects of life, we far too often look at what other people have and just wish that we had that, instead of focusing on yourself and basically asking yourself the question each day: how can I improve? What action can I do to positively impact the situation? After that, so really that's more a mindset to have and a decision-making process to go about, worrying less about your circumstances and more about how you're going to respond to it. Next would be doing what your team needs you to do, sacrificing for your teammates, trusting your coaches, trusting your teammates that they're going to get their jobs done. I think a lot of times when you are able to focus on those things, you get the best out of yourself. You'll not be worried about your personal stats, because it's not about that at that point. It's about focusing your mentality towards what kind of effort am I giving? What kind of teammate am I being?
Yeah, that's a good response. Because the reason I asked you that is because I remember being in high school and I remember how tough it was. And I'm a big guy now. I was a big kid in high school, and I just wish I would have been taught. Like, when I talk to high school kids now and I talk to athletes now, I tell them like my story, like, you need to work hard, and it's not just like, I always thought it was just gonna be given to me, because you get that first recruiting letter and you're like, oh, I already made it. But then you still got to put the work in. You still got to go to class. You still got to get the education. Like you said, the talent's there, but is the full package there? And if it's not there, that's where you could fall, and that's where a lot of kids fall in line of not being able to succeed at the next level, because basically they weren't, I would say, mentally prepared for it. Is where I would say my personal thing was, I wasn't mentally prepared for it. I just thought I just thought life was given to you, and that's what happens. And you learn the hard way. And I hope, I always pass that message on, so people don't do the same thing, and they go and grind, and they become the better self of them. Because so many high school athletes are, and you probably see it. You probably saw it with your team. So many guys are great athletes, and they end up going nowhere. And when they should have, at least went on to the next level, at least, and used it for their education.
Yeah, no doubt. And you brought up a good point that education is such a big part of recruiting. And it's probably, at least outside of the coaching circles and the people heavily involved in recruiting, is something that's rarely, if ever, mentioned. But your academics have to be in line. And if they aren't in line, schools won't talk to you, or they'll ask the coach. And once they hear, that GPA is in the ones or below, then I'm sorry, like, it doesn't matter how good of an athlete you are. Then the second thing that you brought up, recruiting and players keeping their head up, working hard. A lot of recruiting nowadays, and across all sports, comes down to measurables. And, me being a smaller kid, and I would tell others, again, go back to what can you control. If it's out of your control, like your height, like that's just out of your control. And a kid who's 5'8", and I've seen plenty that are great football players, great basketball players, they're just not going to get the same look that a taller kid or, a kid that runs the better 40 will. And I think it's important in those times that you don't complain about your circumstances. You don't just wish that you had what somebody else did, but you go and make conscious daily decisions, momentary decisions to improve yourself, which is an extremely hard thing to do, easy to say. But, if you really want sustainable improvement, it's got to come down to each and every decision that you make. You take a second to pause and make sure that you're doing something that's going to benefit the situation.
Yeah, those are great answers, man. And hopefully these kids learn from you, and hopefully they take your advice, because not like me in high school and just blow people off and be like, yeah, I got it. So hopefully your kids are taking your advice, and it seems like you give them the good advice, and you're setting them on the right way. And that's all you could do. That's all you could do is hope for the best for these kids.
No doubt. Yeah. I'm just trying to practice what I preach and do the same thing. Just try to impact not only my own situation, but the situations of others the best I can. And when the outcome may not go my way, not focusing on that too much, because it's already in the past, and might as well focus on the present.
Yeah. Well, Brian, I appreciate you coming on here, man. We hit on a lot of topics, and we hit some good topics, and you've been a great guest, and I appreciate you coming on. You want to tell everybody where they can find you again?
Yes, sir. And I just want to take a moment. Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, getting to grow through Instagram. But yeah, everybody, please check out my podcast. It's Bolstered Up Sports, and it's available on Apple, Spotify, Podbean. You can even find the episodes on YouTube. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well. I appreciate you having me on again. It was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, well definitely. If sports kicks back up, we're definitely going to have to find the time to hook back up and get you back on here.
No doubt. Yeah,
right.
Let's not even talk about sports. The possibility of sports not coming back. Let's be optimistic.
Yeah, well, it's coming back. So when they come back, you and I are going to hook back up. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much for coming on.
Yes, sir. Thank you.